This is the Art of Network Engineering podcast. In this podcast, we'll explore tools, technologies, and talented people. We aim to bring you information to expand your skill sets and toolbox and share the stories of fellow network engineers.
Welcome to the Art of Network Engineering podcast, and we are renaming it today to the AJ and Aaron Show because you are lucky enough to be stuck with us on an elevator for the next 60 minutes, so buckle up. So introductions out the window. I'm Aaron Engineered. You can find me everywhere. Books are sold. With me I have AJ at No Blinky Blinky, also everywhere books are sold, and even where they're not sold. The dark web is really what I'm referring to there.
Yeah,
AJ,
you can find me in the dark web for sure.
Did I see you bought? Did I see you bought? Start with English. Did I see you buy or receive a new Cisco Press book in the past?
Yes, you did.
Okay, what was it?
Yeah, yes, you did. It is the DevNet Associate. The DevNet Associate OCG.
Oh boy. Okay, so full disclosure, I took that and I failed it miserably, and then I just gave up. That was my foray into DevNet Associate.
But you stopped right there, huh?
Yeah, it kind of stopped where it started, really. I did try, and I thought I had a lot of the stuff, and I went through the blueprint. Obviously, this is pre-OCG, because I'm assuming you just got it because it just came out, right?
That's right, yeah. It just got released at I think at the end of September, early October. I pre-ordered it in anticipation of its release. And it just arrived the other day. So,
dude, like growing up, this is like the Scholastic Book Fair. Remember that? Like everybody,
oh, yeah.
Dude. Okay, remember how stoked you would be to go get books? Like, I mean, no one like at any other point. It's like teachers like, "Hey, we're going to the library today." Everybody's like, "Oh God, you gotta go to the library and look stuff up." That's boring. But yeah. Anytime that Scholastic Book Fair came around, dude, it was like the school turned into like a carnival. I felt like for like a week, right?
Yeah, and it was really funny because I was always like showing up there with my 20 that my parents gave me, and everyone's like, "Oh, dude, you're like a millionaire.
You're rich." I was just gonna say that, dude. $20 is a ton of freaking money. Holy moly! I don't even think I'd seen $20. Like I'd never seen a $20 bill. I don't think until I was probably like 13.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, I used to pay for my lunch. I was like one of the only kids that would like pay for my lunch. It was like $1.25 for a hot lunch ticket at school in middle school. And every time I'd walk into the lunch lady's office, "Oh, Dr. Murray, you're here for your lunch ticket."
Dr. Murray, she promoted you. She's like, "All right, the smartest kid in school, here he comes."
If she only knew.
Yeah, if she only knew. Yeah, remember how stoked you'd be when the book fair came around? It was like, because like this is like pre-Amazon, pre-eBay, pre-freaking Barnes and Nobles for the most part too, right? Like, I mean, this is like how long ago this was. I don't know if they still do it or not. I would assume they did, but
they do actually. They do. My kids go get books. But even my youngest kid, he's in kindergarten, and they do the whole Scholastic Book Fair thing. Now, like, I think they ship a bunch of books in, and they have like the librarian take care of the sales and stuff like that. It's just like a sampling of it, but you can go online to the Scholastic bookstore, and they have a code that gets associated with the school, the daycare center, whatever the case may be, and that way when you buy the books, the sale gets associated to the school.
Oh, so I just thought about that. That's probably true, right? They do give back to the school, so that was like the incentive for the school to have it. But I bet Amazon and all these are just chewing into their business model.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Them and everybody else, I guess. But yeah, I fear for the people who run the Scholastic stuff. It's a dying breed of folk because now you can get everything digitally. Do you ever get the digital copy of the OCG?
So here's the thing. I do the ACM annual membership, and I love it.
Wait, what's that? I honestly don't know what that is.
It's like I'm sorry, I gotta look it up because I can never remember the.
Okay, so it's an acronym. We'll start there.
Yeah, it's acm.org.
Okay.
Association for Computing Machinery. And what you do is you go and pay for their annual professional membership. It's $100, and if you're a student and can prove you're a student, you get a discount. I think it's like $40 a year. It's less than $100 a year. And what you end up getting with that is the O'Reilly digital subscription that normally is like $500 a year on its own. They have made some changes in the last year. So when I first signed up last year, you got everything. You got practice exams, you got digital learning content, videos and stuff like that. You got all the books, and that includes Cisco Press. It includes Packet publishing books. Most of those are in there. Anything O'Reilly does, of course, too. There's lots of great books. And there's just like a whole lot more that's not even like IT related too, right? But O'Reilly's like one of the bigger publishing points for IT related books.
Right.
And definitely the Cisco Press stuff. So I have that. But sometimes I just like to hold the book.
Yeah.
So I bought the Encore book. I used that to study. I bought the DevDen Associate book here. But some of the tack-on stuff that I'll read, I'll just do that on my tablet through the O'Reilly digital sub.
Yeah. This is like one of the other, I guess, we'll call it like networking, never-ending questions, which is like, oh, should I get... Well, not just which book, right? Because like especially like CCNA level, there was always like Todd Lamley and then the OCG, and then there's just a bunch out there. I mean, even Chris Bryant has his own book, but it was like, okay, do I get the digital copy, which is obviously way more convenient because you can even pull that thing up on your phone. So like you're waiting in the doctor's office and you're just like check it out, just like kind of zip through a couple pages, or you wait and pick somebody up from the airport, just whatever mundane task. Convenience is the point, I guess. But like, there's no OCG that exists that like you couldn't tie to somebody's feet and have them sink to the bottom of the ocean, right? Like
that's true.
You know what I mean? They're not for like, first of all, like if you live in a studio apartment, probably shouldn't be buying OCGs, because they're just gonna fill up your entire place. Right?
Absolutely, they're not the ones you use to shim your table to make it even.
No,
for sure.
no, they're the ones you use like if the table completely breaks in half and you need a table replacement, you can just eat on top of the OCG.
That's right. You want a standing desk, you just lay down an OCG or two.
Right. So I think the competing wisdom between the two. Preferably, I would have both because I like the convenience. But I'm with you. For some reason, there's something about having like a tangible, like let me flip through the pages. And I even do that with other books too. Like I don't do a whole lot of nonfiction or a whole lot of fiction. I just basically nonfiction stuff. But I always have to get the book. Like I almost feel like I'm cheating when I buy the Kindle or just get like a PDF because I don't feel as invested almost.
Right. For like instructions, if I'm doing research, like I have a folder in like my OneDrive for work that I just dump PDFs into, and then I can easily pull them up on my iPad and search them. Sometimes with some of those apps you can still highlight and stuff like that. If you want to remember like a key point, you can bookmark it or whatever.
Now that brings up an interesting question too. Like, what is your strategy when you read that book? Because we've heard a couple people on the show now, and they've all had competing strategies. I felt like I'm gonna always go back to like there's no wrong answer. Like, you know what I mean? As long as you're consuming the content and you're retaining it, like there's no wrong answer. You know probably better than anyone how I feel about this subject, but but I just want to ask like your 2 cents of like, so like you get the OCG, what are you doing like in the OCG? Are you, because we talked to Dira, our good friend CCIE by 30. She said that she went just directly to the "Do I know this already?" questions, which I thought was genius, and I can support that too. But I just want to know what you do in there, like physically. Do you do anything to the book? Do you highlight? Like, give us your strat.
So I used to highlight.
Oh no, what happened?
I used to be a highlighter, and through conversations with you and other people, I realized I don't ever go back and read the book again.
Yeah.
So what's
Dude,
the point in highlighting?
Have you ever opened up like just anywhere that you would see someone studying, right? Like we always just see pictures of people studying. I don't know what that is. Like Twitter, let's say somebody's like, "Hey," just as an example, like for you, like, "Hey, studying the DevNet Associate today," and it's like a picture of their book and the highlighters next to it, and it's like,
oh yeah, I've done that.
But the whole page, except for 2 words, is highlighted. I'm like, dude, what were you doing?
You never know what's going to be on that test, man. You know?
So what have we determined here? All of this is important. Well, yeah, that's how it made it into the book, obviously, right? Like, gosh, dang. I don't know. So you don't highlight the whole thing, or do you even pull the highlighter out now? Or
I don't anymore. No, I have these like little sticky tabs, and I'm gonna hold them up and show you. And unfortunately, no one else is going to see them. But they're just like little Post-it pads, and I use that to mark certain pages that maybe it's relevant to what I'm doing at work, and I want to come back and maybe reread it again, or use that as a reference or something. But I don't highlight stuff anymore.
Yeah, I actually use the tabs as well, but I use them for a different approach. Yeah. So I put them at each "do I know this already?" the ditkas. So I can just go straight to the ditkas, and then I obviously marked with a different marker like the part where you can go find the answers, because that doesn't do you any good if you didn't know if you got them all wrong. But so at any time, like, I'll go in there, and I've read, the reason why I praised Dira so much when she did that, and I thought it was so cool, is because I read that even if you attempt to take a test before you read the material, which is exactly what a Ditka is, right? Like, how genius is this? If you take the Ditka before you even read the chapter, you're more likely to retain the information that you're about to read.
So have you ever used or looked at the digital content that comes with the OCGs?
You mean like the CD?
Well, I mean, it's not a CD anymore,
but it used to be a CD?
Basically, it used to be a CD. Now, there's still a CD jacket in the back of the book, and you pull that open, and there's a little card in there.
Code,
Yeah, and you get a digital code, and you can go online, and it's for, I think it's 2 digital practice exams.
Practice tests?
PearsonTestPrep.com.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then there's a code in there for, I think you can save like 80% to get the digital version of the book plus 2 more practice exams. So you get 4 practice exams from Pearson. And you get all the "do you already know these," the Dickas, in digital format. So before I read a chapter now, I will go to PearsonTestPrep.com, pull up the exam, and then I will do the Dickas, and then I will do, because you can bust it out by chapter, which is nice.
Perfect.
So
that's perfect.
So when you're doing the Boson, you can only do it by like the blueprints, like major section that you're trying to tackle. But with the Pearson Test Prep, you can actually do test questions based on the chapter that you're about to read.
See, that's good. I like to be able to filter like that, like you just said, because actually that's funny you mentioned that. That has always been my one beef with Boson. I mean, it by and large, it's a perfect product, right? Like, I mean, like when you talk about de facto stuff that you should spend your money on, it's a Boson test exam. And what's cool about that is that like exam prep software could stay with you your entire certification career, because they just keep pumping out different exams, right? Great content. They explain every single question, right? Like, so if you put it in study mode and you get the answer wrong or right, you can hit the explain and it'll tell you, and it'll give you a freaking link half the time to a Cisco white paper, which is also genius. Yeah,
and what I really like is they take the time to not only explain why the right answer is the right answer, but they also explain why are these other answers wrong, and what are the other answers, right? Like if it's like a bunch of alphabet soup up there, what is that thing? That 3-letter acronym or whatever they're showing you. And so I've been giving some advice to a coworker of mine. He takes his CCNA tomorrow. I'm really excited to see how he does.
All right, cool.
But I told him, while you're going through the Boson, don't just learn the right answer, learn all the answers, because what I saw in my experience using the Boson for Encore was you could get a question on the boson, and it would be flipped on the actual encore exam. So a similar question, but flipped in the opposite direction. So if I just took the time to only study what was the correct answers and not bother with learning what was the wrong answers, I would have gotten it wrong. But because I studied everything, all the different possible choices, I understood, all the technologies that were coming my way.
And also, yeah, because I think what it would do is, maybe I could just dissect like a fake question for a second. So like, if they were asking you something about like, let's say, OSPF, hello, and dead timers, right? Like they would also in the answers sometimes they'll either use like similar things from a different protocol that but if you didn't already, right, that would trip you up. So like, you could just, if you knew that off the top of your head, you're like, no, that's actually applies to EIGRP, but it was just like two numbers. You're like, I guess that could be it. I don't know.
Right.
It's not like I'm saying that they intentionally try to get tricky, but they just know how the brain works, right? And how you're likely to associate certain things. So that's why people think that they're always being tricked, but it's really just, that's where your brain is going and they're just manipulating that, right?
Right. I mean, you're spending all this time learning about all these different timers and, hello this and dead timer that. And it's just like, well, was that for OSPF or was that for EIGRP?
Yep.
And, until you do it enough, then you really start to cement like which one belongs to which protocol.
Right. So yeah, that's cool that those online practices, because I'll say this, testing yourself is going to be the one single greatest thing that you can do when it comes to exam preparation, because testing yourself is basically forcing your brain to connect the dots. When you reread something and it's just highlighted, like if you went back and reread, let's just say that you only highlighted 10% of the book, which is palatable to go reread, right? Because that's why you highlighted it. So it was like, oh, this is very important stuff. To your earlier point, most of that's going to be in the test anyway, not just the stuff you highlighted. But if you just highlight, 10% of the book and you go reread it, or instead you took maybe the Do I Think I Know This Already tests, you're going to do better for yourself if you take the test as opposed to just going back and rereading the highlighting. Because if you think about it, how easy, on a scale of 1 to 10, how easy is it to go reread something?
You'd think it'd be easier, but it's a lot more time consuming.
It's
time consuming. Yeah.
It's time consuming, but like as far as brain power goes, it's about a -7, right? Like, yeah. It's very passive. You're just putting it into your eyes and it's going straight back out, right? Like,
right.
And it's because like it's easy. So to your point, where it is time consuming, you then are left feeling like, man, I sure studied my butt off today. Why? Because you read 150 pages. It took you 2.5 hours, and you still have some of that information because that was like 25 minutes ago. So you wake up the next day and you take a practice quiz based off of what you just did. Maybe you'll retain some of it, but there's a retention curve, they call it, right? That just like slowly goes off after like 5 days. So the likelihood of you retaining any of that is very slim after 5 days. So what you should be doing, ladies and gentlemen, now that you've really just come here to find out how you should get a step-by-step on how to study for certification exams, as if I am the certificate authority on how to study for certification exams. After I started this whole thing.
You do have a lot of certs, though.
I do, but I also started this off by saying I failed the DevNet associate very, very bad, and failed to talk about it ever again and or look at it again. But yeah, you need the way you create the memory and the way you get those neurotransmitters to connect like that is to make it as difficult as possible. And I know I've told you this before, but I mean it's very similar to taking yourself to the gym. You know, when you go to the gym, you know, this I'm just gonna say this as like a generality. You know, no one is going in there and lifting 1 pound weights. Although we could, like, let's just take you and I, for instance. We both walk into the gym and we start just blasting out these 1 pound weight reps, right? And you and I are both in there for like 2 hours. And then we leave and we're high-fiving the hell out of each other because that's just what we do. You know, we're not sweating at all, though. And, you know, we go home and we're like texting and we're like, dude, we worked out so freaking hard today. We lifted all day for like 2.5 hours. Like, and then, you know, wash, rinse, repeat, right? And now it's the day of the muscle competition. And you and I are like, look, there's no way anybody's beating us because we have been doing this for 3 hours a day for a solid month, right? Like, that's pretty good. And we can't lift a single pound more than when we started.
Right.
Because although we were occupying our time, which is not the definition of busy, we were occupying our time, we were not doing anything constructive. But we thought we did. And we were basically tricking ourselves because it was that much easier into thinking that we did something. In fact, we just stared at each other in the mirror and lifted 1 pound weights. So the real way to get ahead is to take your butt into the gym, lift almost as much as you could possibly do for as many times as you possibly can, and call it a day. That's how you build muscle.
And that's the approach I took to do an encore this time around. Was you know, honestly, I had never used a Boson until I got to encore.
Dude, it's so good.
It is really good. It's a very close facsimile to the actual exam.
Mm-hmm.
The questions are very challenging.
Mm-hmm. Harder, I would say.
Yeah, in some cases, I definitely felt that way for sure. Because there were some questions I got on the encore, and it was just like, really? You know, and I had to read it like a couple times. It's just like,
right? Was it an actual softball, or were you tricking yourself? Yeah, I know. You're like, it's too good to be true. I can't answer this quickly.
Right. But you know, there came a point where I just stopped reading. I stopped watching videos. Like you know, what I like to do is,
give us the scoop here. Give us the AJ recipe to success here.
So I feel very lucky because my work wants me to have certifications.
Yeah.
And so if there's downtime, if there's not a lot of projects going on, if I don't have a lot of deliverables, there's no, you know, billable work for me to be doing, they encourage me to study. Awesome. And in fact, that's what like this entire past Q3 for me was. Nice. So I took July and I got my CCNP, I did encore, I did design. And right after I passed encore or my CCNP, I go to, you know, my boss at work and I was just like, hey, I passed my design exam. I got CCNP. He's like, awesome. I'm really happy for you. Now I need you to go get these 5 Juniper certifications.
He's like, that's cute.
And so, exactly. So, you know, because of this kind of lull we had throughout the summer, I was able to spend 25, 30 hours a week studying for these certifications. And so I would hit the Juniper, the Junos Genius, and I'd watch some videos, and then I'd go read a little bit, you know, do some research, find some white papers on, you know, Juniper's website. They have pretty good documentation.
They do. Genius is genius.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I would spend some time like labbing it a little bit. So and then I'd hit the Junos Genius practice exams. And I would just kind of keep doing that, you know, over and over again for a couple of days. And with the associate level exams, I was taking one associate level exam every week for 3 weeks. I did the Junos Genius, I did the Jan CDA in a week.
Yep.
I did the JNCI Junos in a week,
Yep.
and I did JNCI DevOps in a week.
Nice.
The specialist exams were a little bit harder.
What, like which one?
So,
Oh, JNCIS. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Which they
yeah,
should be. I mean, they're like a level
yeah,
above that.
right,
So yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But that was it. Like, watch some videos, do some reading, do some labbing, quiz.
Yeah.
And the closer I got to when I scheduled my exam, I stopped doing all that other stuff and I just focused on the quiz.
Mm.
And when I got stuff wrong, I would look at like, okay, why did I get it wrong? What's the right answer? Is there some sort of connection I can make here? I'm trying to think of the word of it. It's like you do like some sort of weird, funny word association to get it to connect in your brain.
No, I know what you're talking about. Yep. I don't know what it's called, but
yeah. So I would look for something like, is there something in the way that it's worded, the definition?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I making this connection to the wrong answer? I want to make the connection to the right answer. And so even if I have to make up some weird, funny thing, it helps me remember it.
And so even like because I've done that before too. So
mnemonic device.
Mnemonics.
Yeah.
So I've done that before too. Like almost like turn it into a song, kind of. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, just little trips, because those are the things that. It's funny because like those are I always feel like, oh, these are I'm doing that to things that like I don't like I loathe, and so that's my way of remembering it. But in a strange twist of fate, those are the things I end up remembering the longest because I created like a mnemonic for them or like a little song or something.
Right.
That's so fucked.
Exactly.
That's so funny. So one thing I wanted to talk about right there was interesting was you said that you're lucky with the work and stuff like that. Like they kind of like help you out, but that's cool because not a lot of companies do that. They encourage it, but of course it's like always in your free time, and especially if you're transitioning like into this field. Clearly, you're not going to have a job that supports you getting IT certifications if you're not in the IT certification world already. I hope that kind of goes without saying, but no, that's cool. Because not a lot of people get that, so that's a double. Do they pay for your books too, or?
Yeah.
See, this is golden here, man. When we talk about total compensation. I have a thing on our intranet, like on my work main homepage, right on our intranet. There's a section, a whole gigantic section. It's called total compensation. What do you think is in there? What kind of stuff do you think is in total compensation?
Probably like your 401k and your health insurance, and it's like everything the company pays out to have you on staff.
Bingo. And I work for a very, very large company that has much
larger than the company I work for.
Much larger, and my company owns other companies like Universal Studios, right? Like so I get like 2 free tickets to Universal Studios. Right? That's a perk you get for working at this. Like every year I get 2 free tickets or 4 free tickets, so I can take the family. So it's super cool.
Damn.
Right? No,
That's
I mean
cool.
it's a cool perk, right? But again, it's in my total compensation section. Where I'm going with this is sometimes you get offered a job and you're like, okay, well, it's $50K. But I make $50K now. Why would I take said job? Because money is a very like surface thing to get you hired. They can give you all types of stuff. So some of the other stuff you might find in a total compensation package, stock options, free stuff like I just pointed out, like tickets. I mean that, face value, that's like close to $500. And I'm not saying that like I would have spent that $500 anyway going to Universal Studios, but it's $500 I don't have to spend elsewhere because I could do that in lieu of that, right? So put that into consideration. If you're an employee of a cable company, you get free cable. That's $200 a month, right? That adds up very quickly, very, very quickly. So it's things like that that you need to be like kind of cognizant of when you're thinking about like, is this the right move for me? The other thing is like, wouldn't even be listed in total compensation is stuff like what you just said, where it's like, hey, if there's like a little bit of a downturn or whatever, you're not getting laid off. We just want you to study. Like, would you have known that? Like, these are things that you can ask, like, hey, what are the expectations around certifications? Because I've applied places before and they've said, like, let's say before I had like my CCNA, and they'd be like, hey, this is great, but we would want you to get your CCNA within a month, because that's part of our compensation, is like, we expect you to get a certification every year, and no matter what it is, and that's part of how you get like a raise. So you can directly affect yourself in two ways. Like, think of how cool of a situation that is, right? So you're being very selfish by going out and getting yourself a certification. Selfish is a good word in this scenario. So you're going out and you're getting yourself a cert, and you're making yourself better. You're updating your LinkedIn, you're putting it on your resume. You now have that, right? Let's just say it was a CCNA. That makes me more dangerous on the job market to my current employer, and they're also giving me a raise for it. But the reason why they're giving you a raise based off that is because they now know that your market value is much higher based off of that. And so they're rewarding you and, basically giving you like a loyalty, like, hey, just stay here, man. We want you to keep getting better because our company does better when you do better, because, it's just a sum of its parts. So as long as everybody's, what's the term you're using, the tide, that your favorite saying?
High tides make all boats rise.
Yeah. So the high tide makes all boats rise, right? So everybody here gets smarter. It's not like they were paying for the certification. They were still expecting you to do that, right? Do it on your own, self-study, all that stuff. They weren't sending you to boot camps. But they're still rewarding you for it, and they're telling you that. They're telling you, hey, this is how you can make more money here. Go make yourself smarter. Oh my gosh.
Have you ever seen that cartoon? It's like a businessy leadership kind of cartoon where it's like the CFO talking to the CEO, like, what if we pay for all their training and they leave? And it's like, well, what if we don't train them and they stay? Like,
yeah, right. Yeah. The $1 million question, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right.
Yeah.
No, but I think the other part of it does something to make you want to stay, which is like, they care about me. Right. Like, as a human with, some dwindling morals,
not
too many. Like, let's be careful here. I'm not, oh man, I am not Mother Teresa, if that's what you were thinking. And if you were, shame on you.
Oh, I was talking about me personally.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we're both basically just, pretty close to going to jail at any given second here. But yeah, that would make me want to stay just a little bit more, like that, knowing that was out there. Like, oh man, these guys paid for this, and I'm about to use it as a weapon to leave here. I guess, if you give it that much thought, you might think twice about it, and that's okay. Think twice about it, because that's intangible. Like, that's not showing up even on the total compensation button. Right, that stuff exists only in like our collective minds at this point. So, but you need to tally it when you're thinking about like, is this the best place for me to be? Also things like, my work doesn't care if I'm going, in the middle of the day to go get my oil changed or something, right? Like, I don't have to tell everybody where I'm going to be every second of the day, right? Because there's times after, and I'm not talking about myself, but I am kind of, right? But there's times where I work on Saturdays because something needs to be done. Or, it's 9 p.m. and I'm answering something. Like, I don't ever think about that kind of stuff. Just like I don't ever think about like, oh, I'm going to go run and get lunch and it's going to take me 35 minutes, Because there's times where I don't even eat lunch. I just sit here and I don't leave this computer desk for 8 hours. So like, that to me is worth, thousands of dollars, right? If I had to monetize it, you know what I mean?
So that's new for me. So the place that I used to work at, the manager was very like, you're here when you're here and you're working, and if you're not here, like it's He didn't go so far as to say, I need to know why.
Yeah.
He didn't say that, verbally. Maybe he did non-verbally. And so when I get to this place and, I go to my boss, I'm like, look, I can't start work right at like 8 o'clock because, I got to bring my kids to school or whatever. And they're just like, dude, like,
Why are you telling us that?
why are you telling us?
Yeah, they get like offended. They're like, dude,
yeah.
TMI.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're like, sorry, I got to change my kid's diaper. TMI.
So it's taken me a while, but I have adapted to this. I call it like the whole work from home thing, but it's not necessarily work from home or anything to do with COVID. It's trusting the employee that they're going to take care of their job, and that's what I do. Like I get my work done. If I say I'm studying, I'm studying. I'm passing certification exams, so I put my money where my mouth is. I have ever heard of stories where engineers, not on my team, will put down lots of hours of studying, but then they never even attempt to take a certification exam. So that just doesn't really look good in their favor.
No. Yeah, that either makes it look like you're cheating or you're really stupid.
Right.
So I guess either way, you're stupid.
So the thing with my position is I'm billable. So there are parts of my time where it gets billed to the customer. And so while I'm a salaried employee, I have to account for all of my time.
To charge back.
To charge back, right? And even if it's not charged back, then I still have to account for my time, right?
Okay.
Like even all that study time I had to put that I've studied for 25, 30 hours that week.
Wow.
But if I was, working on a project, then I would put it in that bucket. Like I was, build time on this project.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to do it. But I think that's because, and it's only interesting to me because my company's so big. So like, we're not that minute about it,
Right.
Like as far as like, even how we charge customers, I mean.
I think a lot of it has to do with analytics. The company does look a lot like how are people spending their time. Like if AJ wasn't able to pass certification exams this year, was it because he was like 150% billable? Did he not get the time to study? Because they want us to have at least, throughout the course of a year, at least a third of our time should be spent studying. Like that's how bad they want us to commit to studying and pursuing certifications. They want to make sure that we're getting paid to study because customers appreciate that. If you're a partner to an OEM, it is almost guaranteed. I don't write the rules and I don't read all the rule books on partnerships, but I am aware that for a business to maintain a partnership with Cisco, they need to have so many people on staff that hold Cisco certifications. And I know the same is true now for Juniper because I was asked to go get these certifications so we could improve our partnership with Juniper and move to the next level as far as partnerships or whatever go. So that's why it's so important for the company that I work for to have certified employees, and the customers appreciate it too. You get somebody coming into your network to do some work for you, and they see that they're CCNP Enterprise or they're wireless this or whatever that. Like they know that the person they're getting has the knowledge to do the work.
Right, and your company sees that as a selling point too, right? Like that. There's always a what's in it for me, right? Like. It's nice to think that everybody's got these warm and fuzzies, but no, there's a reason, of course, and it's 9 times out of 10 or maybe 10 times out of 10 it's related to money, but that is what it is. By the way, as you were sitting there in your CMNA Cisco Meraki shirt talking about vendor relationships and how you don't know how it works. That was good stuff there. I'm like, I wonder if he realizes he's wearing a Cisco Meraki shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So yeah, that's a good place to be, but it probably, it may or may not show up on our job description. It may for you, it may not have, but like, I'm just saying like, cause I've been preaching a lot lately in, throughout the community on Twitter. And sometimes I get like on these like tangents where I just can't stop. And this one's lasted a few days, but in regards to like the interview process, these are things that can come up if you ask questions, right?
Yes.
So for goodness sakes, please stop going to interviews to be interviewed, because that ain't what it's about.
And it's just as much for you to interview the company that you want to work for as it is them to interview you, right? Like
100%.
I learned that a long time ago. Like I care about the places that I work, and that what's the culture like, who's my boss like, what are these people like, and you can ask them like, what's your favorite part about working at this company, and you can tell pretty quickly when people are hiding like the, oh, it's great here, you're gonna love it, like when they're kind of talking through their teeth, or when they're being sincere and very genuine about the response too. So it's just as much about you getting to know the business that you want to work at more than it is them getting to know you.
I had an interesting situation. It pertains to that, like you asking about the culture. I love that question, first of all. Like, what's the culture like? Because if someone has a hard time describing it, even, that should be a red flag. Not every place has to be like Silicon Valley where, you got ping pong tables and beer taps in the kitchen. It doesn't have to be like that. It can still be a cool company, right? Not everybody has to be a startup. So we can stop chasing that now.
Should we take a moment and define culture for maybe some of the younger listeners of our podcast?
Please do.
Well, culture is I don't know, the atmosphere of the place that you work.
That's a good way.
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things that go into culture, and
yep. What I think people think of, like what pops into their head probably is the quote unquote stuffiness of the environment, right? Like, like when you go there, like, is everybody wearing, a suit with a tie and the blazer, right? Because or another piece of culture could be like, hey, is there a history of like racism or like misogyny, or things like that? Like, hey, this company traditionally does not like to hire women. Or maybe traditionally this company doesn't like to hire from within. There's all these things that contribute to the culture. Some of those that I've just mentioned are awful. Some of them are just, like, I don't hire from within. Like, I think that's awful too. And then some companies only hire from within. You know what I mean? So like that, those are all contributing factors to culture, right? It's not just like one thing, but also some of the stuff that I mentioned startup wise, like ping pong tables, and do they have catered lunches, or like, is there like does everybody hang out with everybody like after work, like that? Those are all culture things,
Beer Fridays, jeans Fridays.
Yeah, exactly. So like all that stuff, diversity and inclusion, and hiring veterans, and how do they give back to the community? These are all culture questions, right? So
but philanthropy.
Yeah, philanthropy. Like, you got money, how are you reinvesting, right? And so all of these things, not by themselves equal culture, but all contributed to it. So one of the most interesting things that I've ever had happen to me in regards to that was kind of like you said, where you just ask about the culture, like say, hey, what's the culture like here? But, how often do you think like a hiring manager is going to be like, well, it's okay. They're going to be like, yeah, it's great. I don't know. So what's happened to me before was, even before I could ask that question, the hiring manager had me, during the interview process, just go hang out with a guy that had been hired in my exact position like 2 months before that. He's like, just go talk to him and ask him what it's like, because he's just like 2 months ahead of you. I thought that was great, because like, sometimes when you're at a place for a long time and they make you go, they always do this, they make you go ride with somebody. They make you go hang out with somebody or like shadow someone, and it's always some person that's been there forever and they're bitter about every little thing, and that's all they want to vent about. But it's good to get a fresh perspective from somebody. It's like, hey man, just so you know, I've been here for 2 months. I still don't have a laptop. Those are all good things to know, right? Like that old guy's not going to give me that wisdom. He like predates laptops.
And you know what? As silly as it is, like this used to drive me crazy, and I know it happens at a lot of places. Like when the company hires on somebody new, and they come to you like at 4 o'clock the day before, like, oh, we got a new person starting tomorrow. Can you have a laptop ready? It's like, what? Like, I
Yeah,
don't stock
what?
laptops. Like,
Oh,
and how bad does that look for the person coming on board, right?
the
Like,
worst,
there was at least a 2 week notice given, so the person at minimum has known 2 weeks they were
for
going to
sure.
be starting here, and so they show up 2 weeks later to this place that they've already been to once, interviewed, know some people on the inside, knew they were coming to work here, but there's no laptop, their workspace isn't ready. It's like, you're not welcoming me in, that we're not starting this relationship off on the right
Culture.
foot. So totally, yeah,
Yeah,
culture,
culture.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how difficult is it? Like, because you mentioned the empty like workspace or whatever, and then the laptop. How difficult is it though? Like when you open the job rec, to just at that point hit the purchase button on a laptop. Like you're planning on hiring somebody, you don't know when it's going to be. Is it like you're worried that the model of laptop is going to change in that period of time?
Right.
Like,
Right. In one of my last jobs, where I was the IT manager, I went back and forth with HR on, like, this process, right? This exact process, this conversation. And, finally it was just like, look, when a job rec gets posted, that's when we should order the laptop or whatever, because
yeah,
it's not dependent upon the person that gets hired.
right. Like, are
It's
they smart
dependent
enough to
upon
use
the
a
position.
laptop?
Well, for us, it was, we were a large engineering firm, manufacturing firm, and
Yeah, yeah.
so if we were ordering a computer for one of our engineers, our CAD engineers, they would get a very different workstation. But if
Oh,
we were getting like just a regular power user that worked in the office, purchasing, finance, something like that, and there was like a standard kind of build.
right. That makes sense.
So the machine is tied to the position, not the person. I guess there could be some unique circumstances where, if the person had a unique need, needed a custom whatever, there might be a reason why you would want to wait and order the technology for a specific person.
So what
But
you
I think,
what you just described though, like with the hey, the stuff's not ready, the laptop, the workspace. There was a while there, like on LinkedIn, where I was seeing from companies like they would. This was part of them like trying to barf their culture on us, even though we don't work there.
oh
Do you know what I'm talking about? They would take pictures.
yeah,
They would
yeah,
take pictures of where the new guy was about to sit, and all his stuff would be sitting. His or her stuff would be sitting there, right? Like their
all
new,
new inbox.
yeah, the Acme mug, the Acme the brand new MacBook Pro, right?
Yeah, yeah,
The Acme North Face zip up, all this stuff just hanging out there, and it's all expensive
right,
stuff,
right.
and so when you walk in your first day and you got your little box full of trinkets and you sit down and you're like, wow, look at this. I got a brand new MacBook in a box. I got a freaking coffee mug. I could, man, it'll hold coffee hot for 5 hours. Oh, guess what? The coffee's also free here. We got the top Colombian. We got a Colombian guy out back growing coffee beans for us. Silicon Valley, that's what they do. But yeah, that was like
You
a
know,
thing for a while.
it's silly little tchotchkes, but it's stuff like that that makes somebody feel welcome.
It
Like,
works.
they planned for my arrival. There's a
Yeah.
place for me to sit. I have a computer to log into. Like,
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff, the
Like
culture things that make a person feel welcome.
right, like they don't even know me, but they care.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's funny because like those are basic amenities at any hotel. It's like, oh, the space is clean. Oh, the stuff is where it should be. The stuff I need is where it should be.
Right,
But like you
right.
show up to your first day of work and they're like, I guess you could sit over there, and it's like you gotta clean donut crumbs off from the last dude that was sitting there. It's like, what kind of crap is this? I've had
You know,
that
it, it
feeling.
oh yeah, dude. Yeah. So the job I had just before this one, just before I came to work here, I worked at another company, very small MSP,
Mm-hmm.
and I was definitely oversold on the culture.
Mm.
Um,
And how like
it
how did they do that though?
so I would go so far as to say that the hiring manager maybe did not have his finger on the pulse of his team as much as he thought he did.
So what you're saying then is he wasn't lying. He genuinely thought it was different than what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't really fault him for, well,
no,
we can't fault him for that part of it, but the underlying issue we can definitely fault him for.
Right. And so, it was unfortunate because like I was super pumped. I was very excited to get out of the place that I was at.
Yeah.
Because it was a poor culture. And so culture was extra important to me for my next move. And, I get there and I get handed a laptop that wasn't even like re-imaged. It was like a 5-year-old laptop that had 100 different other user profiles on there. It was like clearly just boomerang to the IT department, like, oh, this guy left on Friday, well, let's give it to AJ on Monday, kind of thing. And then the entire 2 months I was there, I sat at a coffee table like in the department. I didn't even have like my own space. And it was like every day I well, not every day because my boss didn't work in the office. He worked he was like somewhere else in New England, and occasionally he would come into the office. And every time I saw him, so we're working on that space for you, AJ. Don't worry.
Yeah, constantly under construction.
Yeah.
It's like the highway.
And in the end, that's definitely not what killed it for me. That's not the reason why I stayed there for 2 years. There was plenty of other things that got to me early on that said, look, like, this is not a good fit for me. This position is not what I thought it was. The place isn't what I thought it was. And so, that's why I decided to move on.
Dude, you want to hear a weird story? I did, because this happened to me, the culture thing, right? And it wasn't even the culture necessarily, because everything else was checking every single box. Mm-hmm. So I went and I interviewed at this place, and it was for a very large amount of money, more than what I was making, to the tune of, it was at least a $20,000 difference.
Ooh.
Okay.
That's sizable.
Sizable, right? Sizable enough to look over some stuff, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, it's a long time ago. So at the time, there was nothing wrong with my job, right? Why I was looking to leave, I can't even answer that because I don't even think I was. I was just kind of like testing the waters, right? And it was a good thing because I, used that, unbeknownst to me at the time, to figure out how much I was worth in the marketplace. Hence the 20K. So I didn't know that, but whatever. So anyway, knowing that, right, that they were going to give me another 20K than what I was making today, let's say, it was crazy because when I went there, again, everybody was cool. Everybody was cool to me. Like, it was a nice facility, clean. The culture seemed great. Everybody was like very like cheerful, like almost like not fake cheerful, but I'm like, dang, like these people can't fake this happiness. It was like that weird, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was like, oh, maybe they put something in water or something, but like.
Did we work at the same place? Because it sounds like we're starting off on the same foot here.
No. It doesn't. I don't know. And the story never really gets good. Spoiler alert. But so ultimately, I never ended up working there. I didn't leave the job that I had at the time. But what I ended up doing, it was weird. So like I was walking through the building, and like I think it was like halfway through the day, because like once you get to the final stages of some of these interviews, you know how it ends up just being like you just like are there for a very long time, right? And so you're basically hanging out in this strange building, giving everybody in your sister a resume that you've printed off like 50 of these. By the way, if you guys ever go to an interview, have like 50 of these things with you, right? Don't just take one. Take like 50 of them. You better safe than sorry, okay? Because there's been times where I've like all of a sudden it turned into a marathon interview where I ended up talking to like 12 different people, and I was able to give my resume to all 12 of the people. So best case scenario, you get to give out your resume. So just have them with you. But anyway, I'm like walking through the place, and I think I was headed to the bathroom. They're like, oh yeah, it's down the hallway or whatever. And I just had this weird feeling that I to this day I can't describe it. It was just the strangest feeling, like I don't belong here. And maybe now when I look back at it and I've now identified some new sort of emotions, I think maybe that it was imposter syndrome. Oh. And like I felt as if I didn't deserve to be there, but it felt different. It felt more like like something was just off. You know what I mean? Like, you ever just like walk in somewhere and you're like, something's off here. And it wasn't the people. It wasn't like the way things looked visually or smelled even. I can't pinpoint like a sense to what was off, but it's just like that gut feeling. And I had that gut feeling. It was like, okay, this is weird. So I do what any normal person would do. I called my dad. And the reason why I called my dad, just a little history on me, I moved a ton when I was a kid. I was not in the military, but I moved a ton. And if my dad was just always getting better jobs. So he's like the pro when it comes to like just getting a new job. And when I look back at it, he was really a pro because like the internet didn't exist. So I don't know how he was pulling all this off. Like, I don't know how he was finding jobs. I don't know how he's applying for them. I don't know any of this. So I called the master himself, the dude that's had 1,000 jobs, my dad. And I'm like, hey, dude, just want to pick your brain for like 2 seconds. I got an issue here. Everything's great. They're offering me more money. It's a cool place to work. Like benefits, like you wouldn't believe, like day one benefits, right? Like,
wow.
Full health, you normally got to wait like 90 days for that kind of stuff here in the U.S. And I just couldn't pinpoint it. So I had this conversation. The only thing he said to me was, it sounds to me like you've already made your decision.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. So next day I call and say, hey, look, I can't explain it. I had a talk with my dad. Things didn't feel right.
Is that what you told the company?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was honest with him.
I mean, I think that's great.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, if I'm going to back out of positions, it would just be like I politely decline. I wouldn't necessarily like, oh, hey,
Yeah, I call. No, I did, man. Now you got me like rethinking myself. I don't know. I'm gonna. You know how like when you're laying in bed at night and you start thinking about all the stuff you screwed up in your life. Well, guess what? This is gonna come front and center tonight. I'm gonna be sitting there going, okay, what else have I done? I'm just gonna stop telling AJ stories. No, I definitely told him. I definitely told him. But I mean, I tend to do things that are, I wouldn't say like out of the box, but like I tend to do things that like I don't really think about first. I just sort of go, this is how it should be, and I just do it.
You are very transparent.
Yeah. So I just told him like, hey, dude, I called my dad because something was off, But I will say this. So of course I declined the job, and it's obviously things worked out perfectly fine, which they always will. So keep that in mind. But oddly enough, I would actually go work there now.
Oh.
I don't want to leave where I'm at, but what I mean is like if that situation happened again, and if it was this time in my life, I would go work there for sure, absolutely.
Right.
But
just a timing thing.
Totally. That's what it had to have been, right? Like maybe most of it had to do with like my maturity, like how I felt, how mature I actually was, Yeah. I don't know, all those things kind of roll into it. But yeah, so maybe that's a piece of culture too that although we can't like pinpoint it exactly, like, yeah, that's part of it. It's like if you have a weird feeling, like kind of goes with everything, right? Like if you're in a relationship and you have a weird feeling about it, just go with it. Like,
nobody knows you better than you, so trust that gut.
Boy, that's a gem right there. Holy moly. So to that point, no one should like you as much as you like yourself too. I hate it when people are like, boy, you sure are like, you love you some you, Like, I feel like everybody should be like that because like, I can't expect anyone else to be like, man, that Aaron is a really cool guy if I didn't think that about myself, you know? But if I don't think that about myself and nobody ever says it, like if I think I suck and everybody else thinks I suck, then so be it. But if I think I'm cool and everybody thinks I'm suck, then maybe I'm wrong. But in the off chance someone actually thinks I'm cool, then I wouldn't expect them to think that if I didn't think that about myself,
Right. Well, Aaron, I think you're cool.
Oh man, come on. You didn't have to say that. Man, that gave me like warm and fuzzies. Gave me the opposite feeling of which I was describing earlier. Some little butterflies there for you. So if you guys are listening and you follow us on Twitter, Art of Net Eng, or if you follow myself, Aaron Engineered, or AJ at No Blinky Blinky, send us a culture story, or, send us, like, this is a good one too. Send us the coolest job perk you have. I love hearing stuff like that. Like,
ooh, yeah.
Like, I think people
like
always
unique stuff.
Yeah, unique stuff, right? Like the Universal Studios tickets. I think people always kind of get taken aback when they hear that about me because, we own TV channels and, NBC and all this other stuff. And it's like, oh, yeah, also Universal Studios, like Harry Potter. So, yeah, shoot us that kind of stuff. I'd love to hear that kind of stuff, and maybe we'll shout you out or something if you got a wild story. Maybe if your whole story's wild, we'll even get you on here and ask you a bazillion questions about said wild story.
I love it.
Oh, no, the world is our oyster. So we really, 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 really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us, just us, for today, the Aaron and AJ Show, formerly known as the Art of Network Engineering.
Like a sub podcast within the Art of Network Engineering.
Right, exactly. Like if we were a football team, like maybe you and I are like special teams or something. We got our own little niche there, but we're also like sometimes on defense, crossover players. Yeah, so obviously we typically have more people on here, but you guys get it more than anybody, like Andy and Dan. Sometimes, things get busy and, we have prior engagements. People have lives, and that's okay. And we really secretly knew that everyone really just wanted to listen to us two anyway.
Now you're going to give Andy a complex when he hears this episode.
I know. That's partially why I'm doing it, actually. So we appreciate you guys taking the chance or the opportunity to listen to us. If this is your first time, thanks. We appreciate it. Tune in. Hit that subscribe button everywhere. We're working on a lot of cool stuff behind the scenes. I don't even want to tease you any further other than AJ rubbing his hands in diabolical excitement, because we're really just trying to change, maybe somebody's not whole life, but their certification journey. So we're really trying to help out. I mean, not somebody's, because we know that a lot of people may or may not have the means in which to help themselves. And we also know that sometimes things are harder if you have to make that investment yourself. So we're going to try to help any way we can. So with that being said, thanks for listening. Check out the footnotes for, me and AJ and the rest of the gang's information, and check us out at theartofnetworkengineering.com, at Art of Net Eng, pretty much everywhere. Till the next episode. See ya.
Hey everyone, this is AJ. If you like what you heard today, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcatcher. Smash that bell icon to get notified of all of our future episodes. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Art of Net Eng. That's Art of NETENG. You can also find us on the web at artofnetworkengineering.com, where we post all of our show notes. You can read blog articles from the co-hosts and guests, and also a lot more news and info from the networking world. Thanks for listening.